All right, to talk more about Wednesday's big news out of the CDC, plus tempering expectations that the Inflation Reduction Act will actually maybe do what the name says, and a big decision looming for the Biden administration about student loan debts. All of that before our panel. Let's bring in former New York State Senator David Carlucci and former Trump 2020 Press Communications Director Aaron Perini. Great to have you both back, so let's dive right in. Outkick.com says this about changes at the CDC. It says, from early failings on testing, the world-changing flip-flop on masking, despite the complete lack of evidence, to damaging school guidance devised in conjunction with teachers' unions, the CDC has been a disaster since the pandemic broke out. The organization has been so overwhelmed with politically motivated decision-making that many top employees have left the broken institution. Aaron, that's one side of the argument tonight.
And it's a good, strong argument to make, especially about the CDC. When you're talking about what has happened at the CDC and their response to the coronavirus, it seemed they put politics before people. And right now, what you're hearing and what they want to redo is revamp the communications department, which, again, it's not a policy issue for them. It is a communication issue. It's something you hear across the Biden administration. I remember when questioning the CDC made you a tin hat wearing conspiracy theorist. So, you know, the first step to recovery is admitting there's a problem. It's good to see the CDC is doing this. I just don't think they're actually going to meet the moment and make the changes that are needed so that the American people can begin to trust the CDC again.
And David, that's a problem across two administrations. People have repeatedly been super frustrated with the CDC, with confusing guidance, changing back guidance. So in addition to what they're saying about working in communication, they also say this in Politico. It says the agency will also create a new equity office working across all functions of the organization, from hiring to policy, to improve the agency's diversity. Is that really, should that be among their top priorities at a time when they've lost a lot of the American people's trust?
Well, I think all of this needs to be on the table, and I think Dr. Walensky deserves a lot of credit to admit that there's been mistakes. The culture has to change. It's crossed over from the last administration. I think most alarming, and as the director of the CDC has said, that we saw intense meddling with the CDC under the Trump administration. We have a former chief of staff to the CDC that has been public about that, about the tight grip that the Trump administration had. And I think these changes are to make sure going forward that no administration intertwines politics with public health. The stakes are way too high. We have to learn from these mistakes, move forward. So I think these changes, from the communications to diversity to equity to making sure that average people understand the information coming out of the CDC, that's incredibly important in today's environment.
Yeah. Okay. So let's also now pivot to another domestic issue here. And this is about student loan debt. The left is pressing really hard, and progressives have said to this administration, you promised us that you were going to get rid of a lot of this. We're now a couple weeks away from another inflection, another decision point that the Biden administration has got to decide. So there is a graphic I want to put up here. This is the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. It's nonpartisan. It is nonprofit. They're putting up what's going to happen. Student loan forgiveness, if you do all that in the red, it nearly wipes out the benefits we were told we're going to get from the Inflation Reduction Act. Aaron, are they undoing one of what was supposed to be their success stories?
Well, the student loan debt, when you actually look at how it is disproportionately done, actually supports more of higher income earners than it does lower income earners in the United States. So for progressives to try to be out there and saying they're championing the American people with this is a fallacy within itself. And when you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, while Democrats have tried to argue it will reduce inflation, it in fact does not. When you look at nonpartisan analysis on it, on average, American households will be paying $2,120 more per year in taxes because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And when you pull that, as the Senate Opportunity Fund has done in recent polling, you see that 66% of the American people oppose the Inflation Reduction Act because of that tax increase. And that goes across every demographic, liberals, moderates, and conservatives. So the Inflation Reduction Act, all it's going to do is remind the American people that inflation is out of control and that Democrats are to blame for it.
Well, when you look at something like the Penn-Wharton budget model, which is widely respected across party lines, it even said basically it's going to be a wash at best. And then we have this, our Hillary Vaughn on the Hill catching up with Senator Manchin about why this isn't going to pay off more quickly for people.
When it comes to inflation, inflation, is it misleading to call this the Inflation Reduction Act for Americans when it's not going to make their grocery bill cheaper? It's not going to make everyday goods cheaper for them.
Why would it? Well, immediately it's not, but we never seen anything happen immediately like today. It's turn the switch on and off.
Okay, so David, Senator Manchin, his vote was key to this whole thing, saying, well, sure, in the short term, it's not actually going to help.
Well, it's not a silver bullet to stop inflation, but it's a step in the right direction. We could talk about doing nothing, but the Democrats have pushed forward, despite opposition from the Republicans, lowering the deficit, lowering capping out-of-pocket expenses that seniors will have to pay for medical expenses. The list goes on and on, tackling the environment. Yes, there is a lot more to do, but we have to give the Democrats and Biden a lot of credit for pushing forward and making sure that we're getting results. And what we will see is less of an impact on middle-class families. This is going after the Inflation Reduction Act. What it allows is for the IRS to meet the match of these corporate entities that have been getting away for years without paying appropriate taxes. That means less of the burden will fall on middle-class families. So this is a step in the right direction. Will it stop inflation cold? No, we know that, but we have to continue moving forward, and we would like some help from the other side of the aisle to say, look, we've got to be in this together. And when we look to the major leaders in the economy that we see talking on the TV, they're talking about we need our country to work together. Mm-hmm. That will boost consumer confidence, and that will be a major impact to the economy.
If Democrats wanted to work together, they wouldn't have passed it through reconciliation where they needed just a simple majority.
We're going to leave it there, but the point that you're both going to be right about is that the Democrats are going to get the credit or the blame for this because it is entirely their package at this point. So if it works, great. It'll benefit the country. They'll get the boost from that potentially, but if it doesn't, it's going to be their product as well. So David and Aaron, we all stand by to see how it plays out. And thank you both in the meantime.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks for having us.